All right. So Jesus' ministry is coming to a close. It's lasted 2 or 3 years. We're not exactly sure how long, but somewhere in that. And over that whole period of time, he has continued to preach the peace of God. He's continued to preach the great shalom, compassion, mercy, justice, forgiveness, and grace. This is the essence of the ministry of Jesus, and Jesus preached this and worked these elements, particularly within the poor, trying to give the poor hope in the midst of challenging difficulties. He preached at the rich, too, challenging the rich to loosen up, to alleviate the oppression that existed. He preached this. He served and he preached the peace. He said, blessed are the poor, the meek, the poor in spirit, the merciful, those who mourn, the peacemakers. All of those he blessed. He also had woes, lots of woes. And all the woes were associated again with the wealthy and the powerful. Those who held on to the wealth that the poor people created. He preached this. This was the context of Jesus' ministry. This is what shapes his ministry. And there's no way to sugarcoat it. It was a movement, small as it was, that would either back down or rise up. On Easter Sunday, the movement did rise up because Jesus did not back down. The movement did rise up because Jesus would not back down. And he showed us the way of peace. He led a movement into and through Bethany, just next to the Mount of Olives, and into Jerusalem. He wept over Jerusalem and the temple. He saw it almost really more as an ideal than a place. It was the Torah that was supposed to be fulfilled. That God's love would work through all people, that all people would experience God's peace, that the shalom would be implemented, that I want you whole, I want all of you whole as I am whole. This was the message that fell thoroughly on deaf ears. He said the temple would be destroyed, and of course 40 years later it was destroyed, never to be built again. Sadly, what Jesus saw when he was here was the oppression and the exploitation of people. It broke his heart. So much promise. He hearkened back to the prophets before him that delivered a very similar message and didn't end up very well. And so he organized a demonstration that would say once and for all, this is the message of God. He organized his disciples. Maybe he had 50 or 60 with them. They got organized. They went to the temple gate. They had their palms and everything else, and they were waving them and going on and on and on and praising Jesus and praising the peace and saying this is what it's all about. And finally, Jesus goes into the city, right? He enters the temple in anger. He destroyed property. Yeah, he did. It was kind of like a personal uprising. Anger welled up in him. I have seen enough. I have worked enough, I've done everything I can, and my gosh, the challenges still exist. That anger represented the anger of all the great prophets before him. who called for economic justice, the alpha and omega of the teaching of Jesus. The temple became the glue and maybe the engine for forces of oppression. You see, this was not a simple tantrum. There was way more to it than that. It was a statement that called into question the faith of all the people that were there, and most of the people that were there were the wealthy. You would ask, what happened to the Torah? What happened? What happened to loving your neighbor? What happened to the understanding that all people are sacred? What happened here? It was the beginning of the end of the beginning of the end, and back to Bethany he went after that very first day. Palm Sunday. Today. And he inspired a movement, to be sure. A movement that would inspire millions of people to go into ministry and public service and all manner of charitable works. He inspired that movement, whether it was called Christian or secular. He inspired a movement that led people to say, yes, I want to serve and help my neighbor in whatever way I can. It's a movement that needs to radically rise up more now than ever in your life. To proclaim Jesus and the great peace for all people. But it's a movement that for hundreds of years, my friend, I gotta be honest, this is what we inherited. What we inherited is what we inherited. I can't sugarcoat that. I live in this gospel. It's my job to preach it to you. But the fact of the matter is, for hundreds and hundreds of years, the rich and the powerful that call themselves Christian have appropriated Jesus and weakened the original purpose, because if they hadn't, we wouldn't have the challenges we have today. It's strange. You know, Gandhi, he was a follower of Jesus. He wasn't a Christian. He was just a follower of Jesus. And Gandhi, from his perspective, he said, I wonder, what's going on with the Christians? I'm just going to follow Jesus. And that's what he did. Now, as we enter this Holy Week, there are many people in our country who call themselves Christians and have declared that this is a uniquely Christian nation while denying the very oppression and the challenges that this nation faces. The economic injustice of it all would not be in existence if it was intrinsically a Christian nation. They give Jesus a bad name. They deny the very mission that Jesus would have died for. He would have died for the poor. He would have died for the oppressed. He would have done everything he could to stop slavery and racism, the building blocks of a nation that has acted far from Christian ideals. He would have done something about that. It's the stuff that Jesus fought against. And quite frankly, my friends, that power of God's love, the real power of God's love, the great shalom, is a power that has at times been clouded by those who have different motives. It's clear to follow Jesus is to love all people and to fight for those who have been oppressed and to fight against the oppressors. And I'm going to tell you something. I got to speak hard today because that's what Jesus is doing today. He's not sugarcoating anything. And dare I do that? He made it clear in the temple. Too much of the church has been silent and culpable for too long. But here's the good news. We always end with good news. There's a lot of good news, man. There's so much good news. I could spend the next hour talking good news. But we don't have that kind of time. But here's some things I want you to remember. I want you to remember that here at St. John Lutheran Church in Farmington Hills, we are in fact working diligently to build a ministry of hope and healing. We're trying to do that. We are unpacking the fundamentals of shalom. We are working for those with disabilities and those who have been forgotten in nursing homes. Those aren't just words. We are doing the work. We are helping young people with educational challenges to give them a new identity and an understanding that they got what they need and they're going to get the love and the hope that they need. We are always raising awareness of hunger, and we act upon it. And I'll tell you what, we're doing a whole lot more stuff. I see people around here that are involved in other projects too, beyond the bounds of this church. And all of that is good news. Let's never forget that Jesus died to show us the way to live. At the end of this week, that cross is going to be empty, and it will be ours to pick up. You see, that empty cross is our way to freedom, our way to peace. It's almost like a torch. And it's for all of us to give and receive God's love. And in so doing, we create good news. Amen.